Hello, this is Dean Radin, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hello, this is Dr. Raymond Moody, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, Cultural Creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
This is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hey, this is Eesha Patel, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Eesha, thank you for taking the time to join the show. I'm very excited about this conversation. How are you doing?
I am fabulous, and I'm very excited about today's call because I know that we are going to go next level multidimensional.
Next level multidimensional. I love all of that. So to give people some context about what you're about, let's talk about that, right? So how did this all start for you? I know you're very multicultural. You're very deep in the game of spirituality. But let's start a little bit from the beginning. You don't have to go through the entire story, but just give us some highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been meditating since I was maybe 10, 11 years old. Nothing like a good ghost in the house and a haunted story to get me, on Google trying to see how can I protect myself. So that's kind of where the journey began as a child. And look, even as a teenager, I was really, really just interested in not so much spirituality because I didn't really know that this existed. But I feel like a lot of people will resonate with the journey of being interested in the occult. So for me, it was like teenage witch sort of stuff, so it was watching Charmed. It was reading all the teen witch books in my library. It was looking up things like, conspiracy theories, Bermuda Triangle at the age of 14. And to be honest, I really do believe that there is a divine flow and connection in this, because when I look back on my life now at how some of these milestones happened for me, there's no way that I really could have, controlled it. But even as a child, I feel like I was being led on this pathway from the beginning. Something as simple as when I was 14 years old, I would go on my dad's old Windows 95, big box sort of computer that he had. And Wikipedia was around back in the day, would you believe? And so I went on Wikipedia, and they used to have this wiki random function that I really used to like. And I think they still have it. But back then they didn't have nearly as many articles on there, right, as what they do today. And so I remember going on Wiki Random, and the stuff that would come up on there were things like Edgar Cayce prophecies and the Bermuda Triangle and Area 51. And so I was reading about this stuff as a teenager going, whoa, this is next level. So yeah, went through that for a little bit. And then, then of course I wanted to just be a regular human as well. So I did all the normal things that everyone does. And I went to uni, and I, had my friends, and I went out and I got a boyfriend and did all those things. The next big turning point for me was at the end of my first serious relationship, which was, for me, it was huge because I was really invested in the future of that relationship. And so we were engaged, we were living together, we'd really mapped out our whole futures. And looking back on it now, I can see that, it was probably not the best relationship for me. But, things happen. We make the best decisions we make with the information that we have. And at the time, I was so in love with this person. And when that relationship dissolved was actually the beginning of the next phase of my spiritual journey. And I guess one of the biggest things that happened for me at that point was when that relationship moved out of my life, it created a spaciousness for a deeper level of exploration. And in the process of the whole release and the emotional, dramas and whatever else that was going on, and the inner turmoil of all the heartbreak, is actually what led to the spiritual awakening. So I'm really grateful for that experience, because next thing I know, I'm connecting with higher dimensional beings, and I'm, having these amazing experiences, and I'm downloading sacred geometries, and suddenly my healing gifts came online, my psychic gifts came online, everything sort of happened at the tail end of this relationship. And I suppose I never looked back from there. So obviously a lot has happened in between, but that was one of the key milestones for me to then get onto this journey where I am today, where I'm now coaching, teaching, healing, and just spreading the message that, we all have this connection within us, and we just need to allow ourselves to fully receive and tap into that.
You said some stuff in there that us Americans sometimes we don't understand so well, like downloads, something geometry. I think regular geometry I'm kind of confused with when it comes to school, but let alone like universal geometry or sacred geometry. I feel like, over here in the West, you coming from different backgrounds, like you have different experiences, perceptions of spirituality. Here, we're very conservative, right? Like we're that, I don't even have to like describe it to you. You know it, right? Like the whole world knows what America is. Really, it's like anything outside of the ordinary is very scary for us, unless you've had experiences with, like, let's say, like for me, right? Like I grew up Methodist and then Catholic, and the whole idea of anything outside of that was, or like, even the idea of channeling was something so foreign to me that it scared me. Like, oh, that's not appropriate. That's not things that we do. And not even thinking about what prayer was really, or like, you know, half of the mass, a lot of that, is just programmed in us, and it's so sacred, but it also reflects like things that people do um outside of Catholicism, outside of religion, and you can see it in different, aspects of spirituality. But we're so programmed into these like little funnels of religion, and we think that anything outside of that is bad or the devil or evil, right? But it's not that at all. It's like I don't know. I'm expanding more. I'm being more open-minded towards spirituality. I've grown leaps and bounds from where I was 3 or 4 years ago. Not saying that I'm in front of a lot of people or leading the pack or an authority in spirituality, just that I have my own experiences as a being of consciousness, and I know what holds true for me. And hearing you talk about different multidimensional levels, some people might get intimidated by that kind of stuff because of the over here in the West, right? Like I think you're in Australia, right? So over there, I'm not really sure about what I've read a couple of books, great authors over there about spirituality and where they're at in their journey. But over here, I think people are starting to come out of their comfort zone, or I should maybe coming out from the underground of New Age thought or spirituality in general. I think we're tired of the old paradigms. We're tired of the old foundation. We want to come out and experience exactly what we are as consciousness, as develop our own experiences of spirituality, our own experiences, period, our own perceptions, mold that into whatever it may be. But you talk about multidimensional levels, and I've listened to a couple of your talks about is it different I don't know. See, I'm still learning this stuff, so I don't really know, like star seeds or something like that, like star families and things like that. I don't know any of that kind of stuff. So like what I wanted you to come on here to talk about is that exactly, like educate me on, from where you started in spirituality. And I know this is a long rant, and my guys are in my audience are like, come on, Trey, just come on, get over it. Come on, ask the question. Is when you started experiencing your own form of spirituality, when you started having those downloads, like where did it take you? Did you fight with what you were hearing? Did you ever doubt yourself? And what became true for you?
That's an amazing question. I love that so much, because I know so many people are in that boat right now where they might just be starting to open up. So for me, the awakening happened very suddenly. It was literally woke up one morning and I could channel. And when I say channel, I mean, I had the awareness of an energy that felt other than me. I mean, on the one level, I do believe that we're all one. There is one consciousness, and yet it's the same as right now, I'm Eesha and you're Trey. And so there is a layer of separateness in that through the way that we perceive in this life. So there was me as Eesha, who was all heartbroken and crying and whatever else. And then suddenly this other energy became present in my awareness. And so that was my first experience of what I would call channeling, if you want to call it that. And it was really scary, to be honest. I mean, I'm very comfortable with it now, but I'm glad to be able to go back into that aspect of self and go, actually, no, it wasn't all love and light and rainbows at the time. It was really scary. I thought I was going crazy. I didn't really know who I could talk to about it. It was very challenging to go through a lot of those things without any support. In fact, all of my programs and courses I created because I wish I had had that when I was going through it. So, you know, I used to run a lot of like psychic development classes, and now I run, you know, these weekly activations and stuff, and they're all designed to support people through those stages of awakening, which I never had. I had to go through it, a lot of it on my own. I did have, you know, like, you know, help is always provided in this universe. You know, I'm almost paraphrasing this, the Harry Potter quote, you know, help is always given at Hogwarts. It's the same as help is always given on this planet if you allow yourself, you know, to receive that. And so there was, you know, there was some level of assistance that came through at particular times, but I also do feel like I had to really just throw myself in the deep end with the levels of trust that I had. So I wish I could tell you, yeah, I trusted straight away and it was all amazing, but that's not how it went down. How it actually went down was, Eesha, what are you doing? Eesha, you're going crazy. Eesha, this is nuts. Like this makes no sense whatsoever. And I think I went through that for about a year, you know, just that constant self-doubt and that constant second guessing of myself and going, but is it this? Is it not? Am I connecting with Archangel Michael? Am I not? The worst part was when I realized that, because what happened was I went into some experiences of trance channeling. So by that, it's that experience of, you know, if you ever see mediums on air or whatever, they go into like this whole trance state and they, you know, they're speaking like almost a different language or a different tone. And it's like a different persona that's coming through. And so I did that actually for a good, maybe couple of years or so. And I realized through a lot of internal work and discernment that actually some of the energies coming through weren't what I thought it was. And so here I am thinking I'm talking to Archangel Michael, and in reality, I'm like, oh, that wasn't quite the energy that I thought it was. And, you know, so I had a few of those experiences along the way as well. I really learned to be very, very discerning and very open to self-reflection on that. And I think that's a huge part of spiritual development as well. You can't just assume that everything you think you're connecting with is 100% okay. You have to really drop into your heart space, feel that truth for yourself. And it's a journey. It's such a journey. There is no right or wrong way to have that experience. You know, you have to trust yourself that at least some version of you knows what's going on, you know. And I think there was comfort for me in knowing that I have, like some people call it the higher self or the expansive self, or the, you know, the version of you that has some idea of what's going on. So when Eesha here on earth was completely clueless and going, oh my God, this is crazy, there was that guidance that I was in, even though at times I didn't always perceive that or had conscious awareness around it. And as I became more and more connected with my higher self, which for people who are just starting out on the journey, I would say always begin connecting to your higher self before you try and connect to anything else in the universe, before you try and connect to star family, before you try and, you know, connect to archangels, whatever. Connect to your higher self, because your higher self is essentially an expansion of your soul energy, and it knows what you're here to do. It knows your soul purpose. It knows the commitments and the agreements that you made before coming to this earth. And so when you connect to that expansion within yourself, then there is more clarity around what you're supposed to be doing here, and even just how to live day-to-day life, you know, just how to connect with people and how to have that different layer of awareness and knowledge coming through about even just the world around you. So that's kind of where I started. I was activating my light body. So just touching upon back to that sacred geometry, there are a lot of geometries in this planet that I would consider to be like universal geometries. So the flower of life is probably the most common one. I'm not sure if you and your audience would be familiar with that, but essentially it's a very well-known symbol. And there's two flower of life symbols embedded in the stone at the Temple of Osiris in Egypt. Now, historians are like, how did it get there? We don't know. They don't know how it was created, but it's a very powerful spiritual tool. And one of the things that I used to do early on was I would meditate on that symbol. And the symbol, the flower of life, actually carries information, which all geometries do. All geometries carry some level of esoteric information when we're speaking about sacred geometries. So the flower of life is essentially the blueprint for this planet. So I was meditating on that energy, and then I was activating my light body through another geometry known as the Merkaba. And we are getting very advanced here. I'm sure people who are listening to this can go and Google some of these terms later and have a look at those things. And so through activating my light body over and over and over again, I was able to expand my energy field, open up my chakras, open up my energy field to be able to receive that level of expansion. And then from that, is how I started to get the guidance of what are the next steps? What is that divine guidance asking me to do? And that's how I ended up with a business. I mean, I never set out to have a business. I mean, I was going to be a teacher. So I just ended up with a business somehow because I was following that guidance. And somewhere along the way, I learned to trust it more and more. It didn't happen straight away, but I've had a few experiences along the way that allowed me to have absolute, no doubt, total clarity and go, actually, this stuff is real. And when that sort of clicked over for me, there was no stopping me. It was like, oh my God, I have to share this with the whole world, because how do people not know this? It just became really obvious that this is what I was here to do.
Well, you going back, something caught my ear. You said that you felt like you were channeling Archangel Michael, and you, I guess, later found out that it wasn't necessarily the energy that you thought. How did you find out that that wasn't the energy, though?
Through a lot of meditation. When you drop into your heart space and open up your heart chakra, you can feel the energies with a lot more clarity. You know, a lot of people, they think that to open spiritually, you have to open your third eye. Your third eye allows you to see in the inner realms, but your heart is what allows you to feel. And so sometimes when people open their third eye and their crown and they don't necessarily have the grounding in the rest of their energy centers, what can happen is you can get distortions or illusions coming through. And, you know, people do talk about this in spirituality a lot. There's a big thing around, well, how do you know it is the energy that you think it is? And it took a lot of self-reflection because, you know, there's an element of law of attraction in that the energy that you vibrate out is the energy that will be attracted into your field. And so through just repeated meditation over and over and over again, I cleaned up my energy field so much that then I was able to see with a lot more clarity what that actual energy is, and a lot more truths became available to me by opening my heart and just allowing that light to keep radiating and cleansing my field.
So then you were able, I mean, you did the work and you were able to, find out the answers for yourself instead of like listening to other people or going to another channel or psychic or medium and asking them questions. You were able to do that by yourself.
Oh yeah, I would never go to someone else for that kind of stuff. I'm a big no-no on that, because look, there is value in getting guidance and support. Obviously, I'm a spiritual mentor. I am on the other end of guiding other people. But one of the biggest things I encourage everyone to do is you still have to do the work, like instead of me just asking someone else, oh, what do you think that energy is? I'd rather find that out for myself. Does it take a few extra months? Yes, it does. I mean, if I go to a channeler, they'll give me an answer in 5 minutes. But the beauty of spending, 12 months of doing a practice every day, having that discipline and going in and getting your own wisdom, there's no substitute for that. There's absolutely no substitute for doing the work. And this is where I'm not a big fan of going to ask other people for information about myself when I know that I can go in and get it myself. And even if it takes a bit of extra time, so be it. There's a level of patience that's required in your spiritual journey, which I think, these days in a world of 3 seconds scrolling and instant gratification, people forget that you actually, to find your true self requires an everyday commitment. And that's with anything. If you have an everyday commitment to your business will grow. If you have an everyday commitment to your career will flourish. If you have an everyday commitment to your relationships and your loved ones, you will nurture those. And the same thing applies to spirituality. So for me, it was an everyday commitment. Once you've meditated every day for 10 years, you'll learn a thing or two. So there are certainly ways to accelerate that, obviously. And a lot of my activation work is designed to help people maybe do, like a lot of my clients will do in 2 years, what took me maybe 7 to 10 years, right? So they will accelerate the journey by being in a container where the foundation has already been laid, but they still have to meditate every day. There's no getting around that one.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because like I've been meditating for probably 2 years solid now on a basis. And I've gone from sitting there like with my thoughts to being able to silence them and just sit there, and I could feel the pressure or whatever you want to call it in my head. Like when my brain is silent, or not silent, but like still, when my mind is still. Now, the last 2 days, I've experienced like visualizations in my meditation where I don't know what they mean, but like it was crazy. It was like I was sitting there and I was so deep in meditation where I actually, like, I had my eyes closed and I actually meditate with like a blanket around my eyes so I don't get any, and there's no light. And actually saw like droplets of water hit water, and the next thing you know, I'm thrown into space, and I'm like traveling through space, like very visual. Like I can see it. Like I mean, I'm not like it's not a visualization of like, you know, where I'm at a, you know, outside of my body, or if I'm visualizing something for myself. It was actual like seeing it, and then coming out of a sleep state. I don't know if it's because I'm tapping into deeper meditations or what, but like I saw a vision of like an adult holding a like a toddler's hand, and then I woke up, and it's like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you start having these vivid, more visual pictures or downloads as you get deeper in your meditations, or what?
Absolutely. I am highly visual in my meditations now, and that's just through opening my third eye. In fact, I still remember so clearly the day that my third eye opened. I was activating my light body, and I was sitting in this room, and yeah, I remember it was quite interesting. I was out in the hills, and there was like, there was nothing around really. It was like very peaceful, quiet sort of suburb. And suddenly everything started like buzzing or humming like really, really loudly, like this almost drone sound, to the point where I was getting annoyed. I thought there was somebody with a whippersnapper or something, in the distance. So I was like, can you please shut up, And so the sound was just going on and on and on and on. And as I was sitting in that space, I remember the sound was almost like deafening, it was getting so loud at some point. And then suddenly everything went really, really still. And I just had this vision literally of an eye, like it was an indigo colored eye. And it just went pop, and it just like the eyelid just opened. And I was like, oh, and that was it. I was like, oh, I think my third eye just opened. And yeah, since then I've had very, very, very vivid visuals, and visualization is something I use quite a lot, because it just from a mental perspective, the mind uses imagery. So for any transformational kind of work, I do use imagery and visualization as a way to help people, facilitate healing or transformation in many areas of life. But I think, yeah, there's certainly different stages and layers to the journey of meditation, because a lot of meditations that are out there, they focus very much just on the mental side of things. So it's all about stilling the mind. It's all about stilling the thoughts. I, to be honest, haven't placed a lot of energy into those styles of meditation, because for me, I discovered energy work. And so for me, I was like, well, instead of trying to distill my mind, I mean, the mind is a program that has a purpose, right? Like, for example, if you're driving a car, you need your mind. I mean, if your mind was not functional, that wouldn't work on this planet, right? So I embrace the mind for the role and the job that it has, but I also don't let the mind rule my life. And so meditation is helpful because it can allow you to put your mind in the passenger seat at times when you just want to have some calm and some stillness. And so you can be a little bit more in charge of that. But when I discovered the energetic side of things, I was like, hang on a second, I can use my mind to create visualizations, and those visualizations create actual change. And so that's really the whole premise behind, all energy healing really, is that you can utilize your intention and the power of visualization to create change, whether it's like energizing a chakra, whether it's like putting light into a specific emotional aspect and healing, doing emotional healing. It could be for manifestation purposes. A lot of manifestation also relies on visualization. And so, yeah, visualization is a huge part of that awakening process. But of course, if people are not quite at that point where they can visualize, which happens a lot. I get a lot of clients sometimes who come to me and they're like, I can't even visualize just yet. Then you do need to work on actually opening up some of those energetic centers, getting their third eye open, connecting it, grounding it in such a way that then that visual capacity opens. So it sounds like you've just recently started that third eye awakening process, which is very exciting. It's very cool. It's a great journey. And once you get that, get ready for a lot more fun in your spiritual practice.
It's very exciting. Like I can't wait for it to happen again. And I have to be disclaimer here. So I was listening to it in the morning, very early in the morning. I listen, or I don't listen. I try to. Well, I don't try. I do. I listen to Apple meditation, and I try to silence the mind. And then later on in the evening, I'll listen to a guided meditation. and the guided meditation is like, just trying to connect the subconscious and the conscious mind, visualization of two islands building a bridge and walking across the bridge and having access to that. And then during that meditation, there's a point where I'm listening to the guide, the voice, and I get so into the meditation where that's where the visualization, not like intentional visualization, like or using the imagination to create something like, manifestation, like I'll manifest, I'll place myself somewhere and feel around and have the emotional reactions to things. But this is more so like, I don't know if you've ever read like Robert Monroe's work. I think we mentioned him before, or anybody who has done research in out-of-body experiences where they've had, have you had an out-of-body experience, by the way?
I don't know from the traditional sense, but I do a lot of traveling through the multi-dimensions, and I've had very vivid experiences of bilocation where it's like I'm actually in another place and it feels as real as if I'm here.
I guess that would constitute as an out-of-body, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I'm starting to think that it's all just inward anyway.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So it's like some of the interactions that he talks about in his books, and some of the other guys, William Buhlman, talk about a type of communication that's nonverbal. So a lot of people will get in the stories of like downloads of pictures, like actual pictures, like what I was discussing about earlier, like droplets of water or going through space or people holding hands, and you like have to interpret that for yourself because from what I gather from the stories or interactions with different forms of energy, it's not communication like the way we experience communication. It's more so like reading of minds or downloads of pictures or interpretations of that matter. And I keep thinking to myself, because it's just recent, this is like 2 days ago, I've been journaling it and just really excited to get more into that. I'm like, man, what are they trying to say? Water and space. And then coming out of my dreams or whatever, a kid holding a hand. And I'm thinking, well, maybe that's they're trying to help me, nurse me along this route of spirituality. I don't know. But it's when that happened, when I actually saw it, when I actually could see it with my eyes closed, I was like, this changes the game. Like this isn't anything that I've ever experienced, as Trey, at my perception of reality. This is something totally different that I finally tapped into after a year and a half and some change of meditation through hemisynchronization, binaural beats, guided meditations, silencing of the mind. Like I actually tapped into something and was able to, for a split second, have a visualization of like actually seeing something with my third eye, if you could want to call it that, or even my consciousness. I don't know what it was. I don't really care about what the message is. It's like I actually saw something with my eyes closed and and a blanket wrapped around my head, and it's like I'm tapping into something, and it's like I can't wait to see what else comes.
I love that. Yeah, it's that sixth sense opening up, right? It's yeah, there's a lot in that, because yeah, a lot of people do have that experience of when they first opening up to that, they'll just see like random visions that may not mean anything, and they might not even be intentional, but over time, as you keep doing it, you can create entire journeys and landscapes, and you start to see how there's a connectedness in that space. I mean, some people do talk about the astral. I don't spend a lot of time focusing on that, but they'll go on these journeys and they'll have these experiences in these realms. I think honestly, when you're first starting out, I just say to people, just allow the visions to come, because at first they won't necessarily mean anything. They'll just be like little glimpses of things that are dropping in that might not have any conscious relevance or connection to each other. But over time, the dots do sort of connect up a little bit. And then what happens is you can start to be more intentional in that journeying. And that's just, it just comes down to personal preference of how you want to do that. I think sometimes it's great to just, like, I'm very active in that space. So I'll just chuck on some music, put some headphones on, and then I'll just meditate. I'll activate my light body, and I'm going on these epic journeys. And what I've learned over time is that some visuals are just random and meaningless, and they're just the subconscious playing out random things. but I've also learned how to access very real things that are going on the planet as well. And so that's when the game changes. It's like when you can utilize that visualization, you can go to some like random part of a planet and you can see something that's actually happening in real time, or like even, like another planet, another galaxy, whatever. Like that's the game changer for me. And for me, when I started having experiences with people where, like, for example, with clients of mine, I'm tapping into their energy field, right? So we go into a shared space of consciousness, and we're doing this in silence. There's no like guidance or whatever. Once we're both in that space, it's done in silence. And then I'll go on a journey and they'll go on a journey, and then we'll come out and we'll have the same journey. So suddenly it's not just a random visualization. Suddenly it's like there's a shared space that is created in that internal quantum field that multiple people can have access to. And so things get a lot more real from that perspective. And that's when you can start creating change. You can start, for example, healing or shifting or working with grid lines or whatever. And that's the stuff that really excites me, because yes, there's visualization of what the mind creates, but then there's visualization where people have shared experiences. And scientifically, I don't know an explanation for that, but it's happened enough times in my life with so many clients that I've worked with that I can now just sense the field, and I can create fields as well. When we do activation work, I create fields and people come in. Like, for example, we had the 1111 Gateway recently, and I ran an event, and there's about 50 of us, and multiple people in that group, without consciously talking about it or without it being seeded from us whatsoever, went into this meditative space. And the music was there and they were all journeying. We had some like didgeridoo and like all these different things. And I guided them into this meditative space, and like 5 different people in the group saw the same thing. So like, how do you explain that, so yeah, there's so much potential in that I think has not been explored by the scientific community, and how the unconscious, subconscious layers of the mind interact, not just in ourselves, but with each other, that connectedness.
Yeah, well, they're not going to touch anything they can't disprove, right? They're not going to say, oh, well, let's attack all consciousness, because there's no way you can disprove that or even create a hypothesis to even support that. But what do you say journey? What do you mean, like meditation journey, or were they actually doing like, I don't know, like psychedelics? Are you talking about journey, like meditation?
Oh, no, just meditation.
Okay.
Yeah, just meditation.
How do you activate your light body?
So there's a specific geometry called the Merkaba. And it's basically is this podcast going to be audio only, or if I share a screen, will they be able to see it?
Maybe they'll be able to see it on YouTube for the people that are watching.
Okay, because I can show you what it looks like. Am I able to share my screen?
Sure. This is a big part of history in the show. This is the first time I've ever shared a screen.
I love it. I think you just need to make me a co-host, and then we can share it.
As long as you give me a discount on your coaching sessions.
Always. You and all your humans can come and get a great deal. Yay, you made me host. That also works.
Now it's your show.
Great. It's my show. This is the Merkaba. So this is the geometry that I started working with in my, I'd say, late teens, early 20s. I did actually have a mentor that was teaching me this. I wish I could say that I got this all on my own, but I had help with it. And I recommend having assistance when you're doing this kind of work, because it goes very deep and you can go into all sorts of random realms. And this is something that I do guide people through in my courses as well. So this is the Merkaba, and what we do is we visualize this geometry around us. And so there's basically 3 sections to it. So we've got the top section here, which is it's a tetrahedron, which is like the top pointing tetrahedron. Then you have the bottom pointing tetrahedron here. And then you also have the intersection over here in the middle, which is where the 2 tetrahedrons come together. Some people do describe it as, like masculine, feminine creation sort of energy, or sometimes even like the threefold flame, which is again, it's like that Trinity type of energy. For me, it's really just, it's such a personal experience, I don't get too caught up in labels of masculine and feminine, whatever else. It's just, there's the top one that helps me connect to source. There's the bottom one that helps me connect to earth. And then we've got the heart center in the middle. That's how I tend to perceive it. And the 2 top and bottom tetrahedrons spin in opposite directions. So it does take a little bit of creative imagination, But what I also say to people when they're first learning this is that you don't have to get caught up in the nitty gritty of this. I mean, I have seen websites online that tell you to do some 33-step breath process filled with mudras and blah, 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 blah to get activated in this. Mine's really simple. I give intent to activate myself into the Merkaba light body. I visualize the golden light. I'm good to go. It's a very simple process. And I'm all about simplicity and spirituality. You know, I know that our intention is more powerful than anything else, and you can just have that pure heart connection, and with that intention you can activate the light body very easily. This is actually, it's a natural energy field. It's an innately inbuilt energy field for humans. And so for a lot of people, when they activate this field, it is very much just a expansion of what they already know. You know, there's a deep level of remembering in this. So the way to activate this is just to visualize that. So you visualize one of the tetrahedrons spinning clockwise, the other one's anti-clockwise. It does vary from person to person. Again, some people say that it has to be a specific way for women and a specific way for men, but I think we're really past that non-binary gender stuff. So I just say to people, look, feel into which way it is for you. For me, my top one spins clockwise, my bottom one spins anti-clockwise. It's always been that way. I don't know why. The middle one spins forwards typically for everyone. So yeah, anyone can try this. You can do this meditation, you can visualize it, and you can activate it. But I will say it is a lot easier to do when someone else is holding space who knows what they're doing, because there's an element of vibrational transfer that happens. And so what my mentor did for me about 10 years ago was she had already activated this in herself, and she set up an energetic space where, by me coming into that energetic container, if you want to call it that, I was able to remember and activate this a lot faster. Because it's like when you're in the presence of an existing energetic field with someone in the 3D who's actually helping to anchor that frequency, then it's like your cells just remember that, like how to vibrate in that way. And so there's an energetic transfer that happens in that process. So she did that for me, and I've since done that for hundreds of other people. So we now run activations on this quite regularly, where I help people to activate the light body, and they enter that energetic container, and they're able to, it's like their energy field remembers how to do it. And once you've done it a few times, then most people are able to go off and do it on their own after that.
So just real quick, show me what the triangle that looks like a regular triangle to me. Which way does that? You said clockwise, so I'm trying to envision.
So for me, yeah, this top one here, it goes clockwise for me. The bottom one that's pointing down here this way, that one goes counterclockwise. So they're going in opposite directions to each other. And then the middle one spins forwards.
Okay. That's interesting. So when that happens, like when you feel like, what are some of the characteristics of this, your light body becoming activated? So like you start thinking to yourself, I'm on the right track.
Well, the turning point for me was many years ago, actually, just a little bit after going through the big spiritual awakening, coming out of that relationship. It happened a lot. No, it happened sooner than that. Sorry. My time frames get a bit muddled sometimes. Within about 1 to 1.5 years of doing this practice regularly, I had this experience of just being like the field, like I became the field. So there was a moment, I remember just sitting down, I was meditating like I did every day. And it was like everything in my body just dissolved. It was like my body didn't exist. You know, suddenly I was this consciousness, and the particles of myself were just scattered through the universe. And it was total expansion. And I had this voice in my head, or just this knowing that said, you're in the 13th dimension. And at that time, I didn't know anything about dimensions. I'm talking like, I was like, 22 years old or whatever. I didn't know anything about anything. Didn't even know there was a such thing. I went on Google and I was trying to find what is the 13th dimension. And back then, nobody was talking about it. There wasn't a single article that I could find. I found one thing after going through like 3 or 4 pages of Google. I found one little thing that said something about the 12 dimensions of the universe. And I've read it and I was like, yeah, it's not quite what I was picking up on. And so I think 2 things happened in that moment. One, I was like, wow, this light body activation stuff is amazing. And 2, I was like, oh, Google doesn't have all the answers. Maybe I need to go within. So then I kept going, I kept going in. And then I learned over time about other dimensional frequencies. And I just kept meditating on that. Then I started, later on down the track, as connecting with beings and like angelic guides and all that sort of stuff. And I started to see the different frequencies that those beings radiate from. But it all started with this one practice. And again, it was just that diligently doing this practice every day, working with my mentor, just, getting that guidance, getting that support, and then like prioritizing it. So I was doing this. I went through a phase where I was doing this every day for about 45 minutes to an hour. And yeah, within a few months, boom, there it was. It was like everything just made sense.
Wow, 45 minutes to an hour. It would take me some time to kind of like, were you sitting down and doing this, or do you have to stand up? I mean, I feel like you can sit down and do this, right?
I was sitting down. No, I
Yeah.
wasn't standing. No,
So
I know
like,
the picture is standing like that. No, I was just sitting down. I'd have a cushion. I'd light some candles, put some incense on, put on some music, and then I'd just sit and just meditate. But when I first learned the practice, I mean, my lower chakras were really blocked at the start, and some of it comes down to just cultural things around sexuality. And I won't go too deep into that today, but there's a lot of like repression in Indian culture around sexuality, and so I had a lot of blockages in my root and sacral, and the physical impact of that was that I could not even sit straight for more than 20 minutes. In fact, the first time I did a session with my mentor on this, I remember getting through about 20 minutes with a lot of pain, like a lot of lower back pain. I just couldn't sit like that. And then I came out and I was like so proud of myself. I was like, wow, that was amazing. And then I was like, how long was I there for? And she was like 20 minutes. And I was like, wow, that was so good. And then now I look back and I'm like, that was nothing,
wow. So what are you working on now? Like, where are you at? Like what fires you up? Like when you're like, what is it that makes you so like excited when you sit down to meditate? Like what are you working on right now?
At the moment, it's global change. Everything for me right now is at a planetary global level. So at a practical level, I'm creating the 5D empire, which is designed to bring thousands of people into a 5D vibration. The mission for that is to bring 78 million people, which is 1% of the population, into 5D by 2032. And the reason for that is that Star Family have been telling me for years and years that we only need 1% of the population to reach that frequency. And then the ripple effect, viral coefficient, whatever happens. And so when 1% gets there, the whole planet goes into a 5D frequency and it becomes a very tangible reality. So that is my motivation every single day. And in my own practice at the moment, I spend a lot of time connecting in with the different star family, different planets, the galaxies. I see a lot of what's happening with like the Galactic Councils, Galactic Federation. I'm quite connected to the earth grids as well. So I spend a lot of time like focusing on the earth grids, just flushing out some of those energies, especially the last 2 years. There's been a lot going on at a planetary level. So I do a lot of earth work and healing with the planet. Sometimes that requires me to physically travel and go to places, which I've done a lot of in my time as well. And other times it's more just in my own practice. And then a lot of my practice is also focused around my clients, because I create energetic containers for my clients, and I do tap into that every day, especially my one-on-one elite clients. I am constantly tuning in every day. I'm doing specific energetic practices for them to support them on their journey. I'm supporting the people in my container. So yeah, I spend a lot of time meditating in a very focused way now that's designed to lift frequencies, to support my clients, and also to help at the planetary level as well, and to bring this mission to life.
Why do you think, like, why is it that, and this might be a dumb question, and it's been asked, I hear it all the time, but it's very frustrating. I feel like sometimes when you sit back and you think about, why is it like so hard for us to remember this? Like when we come into these incarnations, into this vehicles, like you come into, let's say you come into the US or even Australia, and you're so programmed. I guess what is it? The level of your consciousness where you're at? Like, I guess, I don't know. Like, why is it that we forget and we can't remember this, and it takes forever for us to learn?
Well, there's a couple of things in this. One is that it is the vibration of the planet and certain things that have happened to bring what we call the veil into existence. So when we come onto planet Earth, you do go through the veil, and the veil is designed for certain forgetting to happen. Now, there's a big journey, which is hours and hours of backstory in this. But basically, the planet, so our planet Earth, was in a higher vibration. It used to actually already be in what we would call a 5D, actually a 7th dimensional frequency. And then what happened over time was there was a lowering of that frequency. And this happens commonly. I mean, planets go through ascension and descension of frequency they fluctuate. It's a thing. And so Earth went through a phase where it went into a different frequency of bandwidth. And in this current frequency, the primary frequency is what we call the third dimensional physical reality. And in that reality, there is a level of disconnection to that unified field consciousness. There is at times a purpose for that. And some people say that, there's souls want to have the experience of that, which is true to some extent. And you do know when you come to this planet what you're signing up for. So it's not like you just, get thrown here and go figure it out. Like, there is an element of knowledge that when you come to Earth, you will go under the veil and you will, have this like amnesia that you go through, and then you will experience that on Earth. But at the moment, the planet Earth is going through an ascension process, which means that we are relifting that frequency back into what we call the fifth dimension unified field consciousness. And so a lot of people have come to this planet at this time. And this is where the whole concept around star seeds and light workers come in, because a lot of us have come in with the mission to help people awaken. There's a lot of reasons for this. The biggest one being free will. So we have these amazing, star family beings, angelic guides all around us. But if they just came in on their starships and they, just sort of dropped the energy in and just immediately got the whole planet up in a high vibration, that's actually kind of controlling the outcome. And they're not allowed to do that, because this consciousness, this frequency, or this experience of this planet is a co-creation. And when I say co-creation, I mean there are 7.9 almost billion people that each of our thoughts and energies are contributing to the experience of this reality that we have. It's a shared consciousness. And through that shared consciousness, we have the physical experience of whatever we have. Inside of that, there is everybody's individual experience as well. And, that's why people start talking about law of attraction, and you go, well, I'm going to manifest a great reality for myself. And somebody else might not be having that experience because they might be in a different space of consciousness. And there's so much more in that, because people don't always know as well. And then people always ask me, but Eesha, what about the kids that are like starving and stuff? And there's a whole other thing in that I'm not going to get into today. But look, there is a divine flow and a divine purpose in everything that's happening. And the reason as to why we forget, there is a specific consciousness, vibration of that consciousness that we are in the process of uplifting. Now, I know through my own awakening, I have had the remembering of the experience before coming to this planet of why I came here. And I remember being on another planet in another dimensional space in a almost formless type of existence. And I call it the pink planet because that's what it's always just been. It's a pink planet. The sky's pink there. I don't know why. And there's like everything's like lilac and pink. And so I remember being in that space, and I was just like formless consciousness in a body of what seemed like almost water-like. Like it was a lot more watery and a lot less air on the atmosphere there. And this sound went out through the universe, like this resounding sound. And when I heard that sound, the meaning immediately I knew in my body, I was like, oh, planet Earth needs us. And I get goosebumps every time I tell this story. Like even now, I'm like, I can just feel that energy because there was no two way about it. It was like, oh, Earth needs me. Boom, I'm here. Like there was not even questioning. Like it was that pure love of, it's time to wake up the planet. It's time to shift that frequency again. And hundreds of thousands of us have come here to do this work. It's not just me. I mean, there are so many star seeds and light workers out there. In saying that though, one of my roles is to guide other star seeds and other light workers into their awakening, because I've noticed that there's a lot of people who have come here with those types of missions, but they've also been a little bit caught up in the 3D stuff, especially when it comes to money. So I'll do a lot of work around helping spiritual people, be more abundant because they can't do their mission until they have the money. And so I help people to clear those frequencies up in themselves so that they can then go out, radiate their light, do the healing work that they're here to do, and then ultimately contribute to that collective uplifting and ascension of this planet into that unified field consciousness.
Do me a favor, unshare the screen so I can actually see you because this is such a great topic. There you go. So a couple of things that I want to unpack real quick. You're talking about, and I totally agree about the collective consciousness of like, this form, right? This society, this collective consciousness, what we're experiencing as a collective, and then the individual consciousness. But can people individually, like not recreate Earth, but like recreate their backstories with manifestation and visualization.
Like changing the past.
Well, changing their part, changing the play, right? Like I always hear that we're the actor, director, and the producer of our own stories, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we, like, if the actor wakes up and says, I don't necessarily like this play anymore, can I change it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the whole awakening process. I mean, it really depends on what layer you're playing at. You know, if you're not awake and you're just like going through the motions and just, you know, doing whatever, and then you realize that and you wake up from that, yeah, absolutely, you get to have a say in that. What I will say in that though is that sometimes what happens then is the ego can come in, and there's a real element which I see sometimes in like manifestation communities of like, I'm going to have this and I'm going to have that. And that to me, I'm like, to be fair, I did that for a little bit. I mean, I got the car, I got the house, I got all the things that I wanted. And then I was like, okay, so what? You know, like, so what, you know? And I think there was a point where I was like, I'm just going to be in divine service and that's it. You know, like it's not about me and what I want. It's the divine will that flows through me. And the irony is that when you surrender into that and you're fully at the will of the divine, then what you do in your day to day is nurturing, it's helping people, it's unconditionally loving. But at the same time, you receive everything you need to receive. I mean, a pure unconditional love will give you the abundance. It'll give you all the things. I mean, I don't even have to think about half the time of I mean, I don't have to think about money. I don't have to think about any of those things. I'm just focused on where am I showing up today? What is that divine energy that's flowing through me, and what does it require me to do today? And so when you truly surrender yourself into that consciousness, that source field, things get really easy and things flow a lot, you know. And so there's a space beyond manifestation that I think people are just starting to wake up to a little bit. And it's, to me, beyond manifestation is like, you know, people talk about abundance a lot, but the next level of that is providence. And providence holds a frequency such that everything is provided to you before you even ask for it. And this is where I experience pure miracles in my life. You know, I mean, things turn up in my reality before I've even had a chance to realize that I wanted it. And so my life is better than what I could have manifested because I'm just in that divine flow. Because if I had thought, oh, I want XYZ, I probably would have got XYZ. Instead, I got XYZ and the rest of the alphabet and everything in between. So, and that actually came from not asking for it, but actually just saying, hey, universe, what can I do for you? How can I show up today? What do you need from me? And being totally trusting in that love, in that flow, doing crazy shit that doesn't even make sense, like booking plane tickets halfway around the world on, you know, moment's notice, and following that internal guidance, which is how I get to where I am today, of going, wow, I just have a really great life. And it's easy, as it should be, you know, because divinity and creation is supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be paradise. And so when you surrender yourself to the divine, you move from resistance and I have to do it all to, oh, I already have it all. Maybe I'm just going to have a great life.
I love all of that. How do you find other light workers though? Like, how do you know if they're light workers?
Every person that comes to me is a light worker. I'm like a walking magnet for light workers. And I think that's just the frequency thing. I mean, look, when I moved here to the Gold Coast for 3 months, I didn't even have a car. My car was still in Adelaide and I had to get it shipped over. And so for 3 months, I was driving around Uber, and like even my Uber drivers were like light workers. Like we're having spiritual conversations with randoms. Like my Airbnb, when I moved from Perth to Adelaide last year, turns out she's a coach and she's like into all this stuff. And so I'm so immersed in that energy now that everyone in my field is in that. I don't think I really know anyone who's not, which for some people seems really like out of the ordinary. But I think once you're in it, like attracts like. So for me, I'm so immersed in that reality that it's totally my norm. So for me, they're everywhere. And I think they find me as well. They come out of the woodworks.
How have your conversations been, like, as you progress spiritually with like your family and your friends? Like, have they strengthened, like with you know, with your parents? Do they understand like what you're talking about, or they just kind of like write you off as like, man, she is, oh, okay, sweetheart, we hear you. What does that look
at
like?
First it was like that. Well, at first I was also not fully out of the closet. I wasn't fully open to sharing. I mean, for the first couple of years of my business, they thought that everything I did was in meditation. Well, I'm going to speak into this a bit, because initially when I first started learning all this stuff, I naturally wanted to share it with anyone and everyone. I wanted everyone to know about it, but I also became a little bit preachy, and my family wasn't ready to hear it. They weren't ready to hear about, the galactic families and their beings and all the things. And so sometimes that made me really sad, because I wanted to share this amazing thing that I discovered, but they were just so not open to receiving it at the level that I wanted to talk about it. And I could feel, sometimes the parents would just like, they would just shut off from some of the conversations, or they would just go back to talking about the food or the TV or like whatever normal stuff. And so I really had to learn to honor their journey in that. But one of the biggest things that happened for me was, as I got deeper into this journey, it was actually my own healing that happened. And, things with my, my parents, and like, it's like better than ever, because there's a level of connection there and love that I have for them that is it just goes beyond anything else. And so there was a point where I wished that they would understand me, because I wanted to be seen and heard. And, typical, I want mommy to understand me. I want daddy to see me and be proud of me, and like, all that stuff. And it's fine. There's layers of healing in that. But when I really just stepped into truly my mission, I realized I didn't need that validation from them or anyone else. And so then I was able to love them unconditionally. And then what happened was they just came around in their own time. I mean, now my mom sends me articles about, she sent me articles about some UFO sighting somewhere in the world, and so when she sees stuff like that, she's now sending it to me. But it's taken a few years for them to get to that point. And actually a couple of years ago, I ran a workshop at my studio in Perth back then. And it was about connecting with star family. And so we had a panel of 3 speakers, including myself, and we were all sharing our experiences about, connecting with UFOs. I actually invited my family. I didn't know if they would come or not, but I said, look, I'm having this open talk. Why don't you guys come? And my mom and my dad and my brother, 3 of them all came. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, it was so beautiful. And my brother sat at the back the whole time texting on his phone, and, it was like only half there, but he was still present in the room, and that meant the world to me. And so they don't fully understand everything that I do, but I also don't need them to. And I think, there's a level of loving connection that you can have with your loved ones, where you can acknowledge where they're at in their journey and not force them to be where you're at, and that's okay. I think that's the next level of transcendence and spirituality, because what I do see, and I really have a bit of beef against this, is when people get on their high horse of spirituality and they're like, oh, I'm now so spiritual and you're like lesser than me. Like, no, that's not cool. Everyone's got their own journey. I mean, you imagine, where we all were 10, 20 years ago, we were all having our own shit going on. So who are we to judge anyone else? The only person that's allowed to judge is God, and God doesn't judge. So no one's allowed to judge. That's the end of that, end of discussion. So I learned to be more loving in that, and I learned to be more accepting in that. And, my parents will just wake up at the rate that they're waking up. And if they don't, that's fine, man.
Mhm.
They've given me all the love, all the resources. They've supported me so much on my journey. I couldn't ask for anything more. And if they don't know exactly what I'm talking about when I start harping on about the 13 dimensions, that's cool by me.
You step very elegantly in that, as far as like explaining your, relating yourself, your story to that question, because like a lot of people struggle where, for sure is like, I don't know exactly what my journey is, right? Like I hear you say things about different dimensions. I hear like if there is a hierarchy of like families and like archangels and different things like that. But I'm more concerned about like where I'm at and what I'm learning and what I'm taking in as a being of consciousness, right? Like I think that should be everyone's step one, is like find out who you are, like go in, right? Like go in through meditation, start out step one, just start meditating, sitting down quietly and just feeling your body, feeling your thoughts, feeling everything, your heart, right? Like I just started opening my heart chakra, and I've covered it up for years because I thought that, I didn't want to feel my emotions. I didn't want to feel my disappointments. I didn't want to feel my sadness or my love. I just didn't think that was what guys did who had respect, right? Like my heart was a stone, and it started cracking, and now it's slowly, the pieces of rock are falling off my heart, and I'm starting to feel more and love more. And I find myself like tearing up for little things throughout my day, like of just a simple visualization of a guy walking down a street, and he's got his grandson on top of his head, and he's walking him on his shoulders, and his grandson has a leaf, and it just literally happened the other day, and he's holding a leaf, just looking at it like intently, like just like the first time that he's actually taken the time in his young life to look at this thing, this object, and like he's just analyzing it. And I'm like that moment just was powerful to me. And I'm like starting to like, you know, have emotions about it. And I find myself doing that. But it wouldn't have ever happened if I didn't take a moment to sit down and find out like what it is that I am, you know, like what is this mystery of life, that this space-time reality where I'm sitting here having a conversation with you, Eesha, that's in Australia right now over Zoom, and we're talking about different dimensions, like, and it feels good. You know, like it's just it's crazy, this mystery of life. And I think it's not a bad thing to question what it is that we are and what it is that we're here to do, and what is it that makes it all work. You know, what is consciousness? I don't know. You know, our experiences are defined by how we perceive them, and let's question that. Let's find out what it is that makes us tick. So sit down and look in and love.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Cheers to that.
But it's, you know, I say that, right? Like I say, oh, love. I'm just learning how to love, really, and finding out how to love myself and not be so judgmental, self-judging. And what is unconditional love? Is, you know, that's tough too. How do you unconditionally trust your higher self and know that they have your best interest at heart, right? You know, like, is it that, you know, I hear all the time with the new age thought, you know, we're all one, we're all connected, and that's great, and that's awesome. But I know that at one point, hopefully, I'll experience that. Like, you know, I say I know, and then I hope, but I wanna believe that. Is there a God, or is it that we're all God? Is it that, you know, am I God's toenail, or I'm actually, you know, what is that? What does that look like? You know, and I know that there's something there. I've read, there's a whole case of books behind me, and I've read a lot of near-death experience and a lot of OBEs and a lot of, you know, a lot of stuff that you're referring to. And it's exciting because it's not pigeon-toeing me into one belief, where religion did that for me for a long time and said that you had to, you know, this is what you have to believe or else you're going to hell. And everything that you know, I stepped out of that because a lot of that, it's fear. I didn't want to fear things anymore. I didn't want to fear that I had to be perfect. And so, which led me to different avenues of spirituality. And the more that I'm open-minded to, the more that things come into my life, the more signs that I get too, right? Like the more coincidences, if you want to call it that step in and, you know, lead me down my path, and which has led me to here to you to talk, you know, speaking with you. But it's being open-minded to that, not shutting down and being scared of it, right? Like it's anything that's different is scary, but it's also liberating in a sense that you're going to grow from it no matter what, right? Even if it's you know, what is bad, what is good or bad? It's just what we label it as, right? Like, you know, it's all an experience. It's all our experience. So whatever your experience is, you know, as your point of consciousness, you define it as good or bad. And how do you define good or bad? It's what society has said is good or bad. So it's like, find out for yourself what truly is good or bad. Find out for yourself truly what your experience is and how you perceive that through your consciousness. And I mean, that's just my advice for people listening right now that are kind of like, what am I going to do? Like, you know, it can be confusing because there's so many things out there, books, you know, courses, things like that. You need to do this, you need to experience this. You know, meditation looks like this. And I don't think it's like that. I think it's each person is, you know, their own individual point of consciousness, but their own point of learning, their own experience with spirituality is how they learn and how they develop. And I don't know this rant is making sense at all. I just really enjoyed this conversation, and you know, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as you can tell, I'm so passionate about this. I could talk all day, every day about this.
You're probably gonna have to
Just
come
so
on
beautiful.
again.
And I love meeting people who are so inquisitive and so, you know, open to receiving that, because I think, you know, the first step really is asking those questions that you just said, and you're asking the right questions. So I don't necessarily know if there's always answers to everything, because one thing I've learned about spirituality is that it's infinitely expansive, just like this universe that we live in. And the more you think you know, the more you realize you don't know. But there's a beauty in that. And, you know, I think you've hit the nail on the head with just, you know, the little moments, the presence of just being here now, looking at the grass and the plants and the birds and the, you know, and the little things, and going, wow, what a beautiful world we live in.
Beautiful conversation with you, Eesha. I'm gonna have to have you back on again, because yeah, I just think that it's that important to get this, you know, just having this conversation, you know, what type of energy that puts out into the world, you know, and it kind of makes that curiosity peak in someone's head about what are they talking about. I want to know more about that. So if they want to find out more about that, where do they go? How do they find out more about you?
So if you search Eesha Patel, EeshaPatel, you will find me on Facebook. You will find me on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel, my website, eeshapatel.com. Come and say, hey, we've got a kick-ass group that I run with, there's about 3,000 people in my Facebook group right now, where we have all sorts of fun in there. So yeah, just come and connect, send us an email. I'm on all the things, so come find me.
All the things. Eesha, I can't thank you enough for joining the show.
Thank you, Trey. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we will definitely be doing this again.